Welcome back, everyone. This is To Your Greatness with Dawn Mathis. And this is part two in a two-part series on forgiveness. And we have with us again today Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano from Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado.
Thank
Welcome,
you, Dawn. It's
Michelle.
great to be with you again.
Yeah. Thanks for
Always
coming
a
back.
pleasure.
So, just a tiny bit of a recap. We talked about what forgiveness is and what it is not last time, and you shared with us a very powerful story about some of your own history, and also changing your perspective on things that had happened to you, so that you could interrupt the pattern of doing unforgivable things or just maintaining the history of what you grew up with. So that was very powerful. If you all are joining us and you were not here for the first episode, I highly recommend you listen to the first episode as well. So today, Dr. Michelle, we were going to talk about just some ways that maybe you have trained or taught people in your congregation or in your life outside of Mile High, some ways that that people could learn to forgive or try to let go of the angst and the anger that keeps people
Yes,
stuck.
great. Yeah, there are, I think, some very powerful steps that people can take who want to forgive, and that's the first step is intention. I intend, as a person who believes in the power of forgiveness, to always be forgiving in the way that I live my life. And so, setting that intention for myself means that I have to regularly check in with myself to see if there's someone that I am holding grievances towards, someone from my past or someone even today that I'm holding a grievance towards, because I believe so much in the freedom that forgiveness brings to me. And so living in that intention, then I have to can't just have that intention. I have to check in regularly with myself. And so I identify, and that's the step I would say. Set an intention to be a forgiving person. Set an intention to be free is the first step. Then the second step, it might be to begin to identify the people that we need to forgive. So if I'm approaching this work for the first time, I might look at the usual suspects, family members, friends, teachers, authority issues,
Mm-hmm.
whom I have felt hurt by, and maybe begin to work with one person at a time. The most important one was my father when I was a child. And so I had to really start there. And once I established a pattern of feeling freer and freer and freer from him, it helped me to then approach other people in my life. And then I love the teacher Edwene Gaines, who talks about every night when she goes to bed, she asks herself, is there anyone that I encounter today whom I put outside of my heart? Whether it's a
Ooh,
grocery store
wow.
clerk or a person in a driving situation that you got angry with, or your kid or your spouse. And then if there is someone that I have pushed out of my heart, then I do what I can to send them love and compassion and forgiveness so that I can be connected. And there are some cognitive things I think we can do to begin the process of forgiveness. I just recently have been teaching a class online, and I encountered some material in the workbook by the author Fred Luskin. And he's talking about forgiveness and talks about something that I find really amazing, which he calls unenforceable rules. That part of what keeps us from being able to forgive other people is that we apply unenforceable rules to that relationship. And he says you can always know if you're applying an
Mm.
unenforceable rule if you think, well, there's a should or there's a must in that relationship. Like all parents should love their children. is an unenforceable rule.
Mm.
We can't enforce it. I cannot have a parent in my life and say, well, my mother should love me. In an ideal world, right, it'd be great if my mother loved me or my father loved me. But we have to all look that a lot of our resentments are based on unenforceable rules that or agreements. We didn't have an agreement with that human being that they couldn't, speed past us and cut us off on the road, and yet they did. And we would think, oh well, the rules of the road are the rules, but that's kind of an unenforceable rule, and we take unenforceable rules and apply them to our relationships every day, and then we find resentments come up. So he invites us to look at, are you applying unenforceable rules to your relationships? And if so, how can you see that about yourself and begin to stop doing that? And then also be more clear. He uses examples of partners. My partner should just know what I want them to do and just do it without being asked. That's an unenforceable rule. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Right? So if you're hanging no,
That
you're
doesn't
hanging on
happen.
to resentment about they didn't even know that I wanted them to blah 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 blah, then you lose. You're just going to lose, right?
Yeah, you're setting yourself up and the relationship up for
Absolutely.
failure.
So I found this to be
Yeah.
this is new material for me. I found this to be really
Hmm.
helpful to begin the process of opening my mind and heart. So beginning to ask questions is a really important step. How could I get a better understanding of maybe what were they thinking? Um, if I were in their shoes, might I have done the same thing? If I'm really honest with myself. Here's a really hard one. Was there any part that I actually had to play in what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Did I
Mm.
did I contribute to the betrayal or to the thing that I'm so angry with about? Because sometimes if I take my responsibility and say, well, gosh, I was angry with them for years and never told them, and maybe I was not very communicative. Oh, and then they left me. Isn't that interesting? So asking some of
Mm.
those questions to begin to soften the unforgiveness, to soften the resentment.
Mm.
And when there's an opening, then I think a next step is to then actively start to pull myself into a state of forgiveness for that person. Some people simply use their minds to see themselves. What would it feel like if I forgave that person? To use affirmations. It's been quoted many
Mm-hmm.
times that Jesus in the Bible, when he was asked by his disciples in the New Testament, how many times should we forgive? And they went through this rigmarole, and ultimately he came up with 70 times 7. So there's a lot of spiritual practice that people do where they will daily for a while, for 7 days, write out 70 times, I forgive my father, or I, Michelle, forgive Danny, or I, name the people and just write it out or say it 70 times every day, so that we can begin to hear ourselves say it and begin to activate the process of letting go. Those are some of the practices that I think can really support us in beginning to forgive.
Yeah, and even when we've made that conscious decision to forgive, that intention, like you said, set the intention first. It's so easy for that resentment to creep back in because we're spiritual beings
Oh, of
having a human
course.
experience.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I can say
yeah.
that I've seen it. It's like
Um,
layers. I feel like sometimes, especially with long-term
mm,
relationships or long-term pain and suffering we've hung on to, we might have to take it off
hmm.
bite-sized chunks, a little bit at a time until
Yeah.
it becomes more pervasive. So don't be discouraged if you go through this whole thing to forgive someone and feel free, and then something happens, someone treats you a certain way, or something occurs and there's a trigger. What we can be tempted to do is, oh my gosh, I did all that work, it doesn't work. So you're absolutely right, Don. Just
Yeah.
understanding that it can be
Yeah.
layers of forgiveness that have to occur with some of those long term resentments.
Yeah. Two steps
Yes.
forward, one step back, and Just
Yes,
keep at it.
absolutely.
Um, what do you think about trying to separate the behavior from the person that that was the perpetrator
I
of
think
that
that,
action?
yeah, I think
Is
that
that
is
helpful?
also very, very helpful because at the core, I, especially if you're somebody like me who at the core believes that people are good, people all want the same thing. Everyone wants to be loved, to be seen, to be acknowledged, to have uh, loving relationships. I think even people who are more introverts who don't have a lot, maybe they don't have a lot of relationships, sometimes introverts, but everybody still wants to have that same feeling. So at the core, there's a lot about us that is all the same. Um, but we sometimes have issues that cause us to behave badly. And I would say that for me, anytime someone has hurt me or I've seen people hurt each other, it's born out of previous issues that they still haven't resolved within themselves. And if they'd resolved that issue, they might have been more respectful or they might have been able to be more functional. And so, and I also
Mm.
think something you said that is core to this is that a lot of people, when we start talking about forgiveness, haven't learned to forgive themselves. So if we're hanging on to resentment and
Mm.
anger with ourselves constantly, in terms of the law of attraction, which I believe fervently in, we're going to attract people to us that reflect the degree of our unforgiveness. So we don't, and we also
Mm.
don't get a pass. We don't get to walk around yammering at ourselves about what an idiot we are, what a jerk we are, how stupid we are, how ugly we are, and how much people don't like us, and we just get everything wrong, and we just da, 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 da. That conversation is like affirmative energy in our brain, and we don't get a pass from it. So that constant mindset, if you think of Pigpen from Charlie Brown, who always walked around with that dirty, cloud. People
Cloud.
who walk around with that dirty cloud are attracting points for people who are angry and who are maybe going to do
Mhm.
something dysfunctional or hurtful. So if you want to avoid the conditions whereby you come into contact with people who are bad actors, if you will, who are just mean, disrespectful, or even violent, one way is to sweep out your own dirt, is to stop being so hard on
Mm.
ourselves and start to learn to forgive ourselves and be compassionate with ourselves too. Hmm.
Love that.
Very important.
Love that. Mary, Mary Morrissey, who I know that you love her work as well. One of her foundation tenets is the content of your life is the
Oh,
curriculum
it sure
of your
is.
evolution.
Yes,
And so things that are happening in our
it
lives,
is.
it's our curriculum. We're supposed to be learning from it. It's not that there's a big bad God and he's mad at you for something and these things happened. It's we're supposed to learn from these things, and so looking for the golden nugget of truth or what am I to learn here? And like you said, the law of attraction. We keep attracting the things that we need to
Yes,
learn until we learn
yes.
them.
And I think one of the fallacies about that journey of evolution is that people think if I'm just a good person, nothing bad will ever happen to me. Or we look out at other people and we say, that's horrible that that happened to them. They're such a good person. They're such a kind person. But the
Hmm.
reality is that, let's talk about it. I love that quote about curriculum because I often say to people, okay, let's say you do sign up to go to college to get a degree, which many of us have done, right? And you say, okay, I have a goal. My goal is to become a doctor. And you have a set curriculum that you have to take to evolve yourself to become a doctor. And you sign up for the first class and you get into that class and it's hard And you're presented with material you don't understand, and you have to learn, and you have to grow, and you get upset with yourself and upset with the professors and upset with the curriculum because gosh, it's hard. But you know you can't stop, because if you stop, you're not going to get to the ultimate goal. Well, in the game of life, our ultimate goal is to continue to, I think, evolve to become the best version of ourselves, which I think includes being as
Mm-hmm.
loving and kind and joyful and in integrity as we can possibly be. And that curriculum is not automatically given to us. We've all signed up for that. And sometimes we get a class that's hard. That class is betrayal. That
Mm-hmm.
class is rejection. That
Yep.
class is obstacle. That class curriculum is
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of things that appear to be a block on the path. And the saddest thing for me is when someone lets that betrayal, that obstacle, that hurt, that pain, that suffering stop them in their tracks from their evolutionary journey and
Mm-hmm.
think that that somehow means they're not supposed to be the doctor. Wow, this class was hard, so I guess I'm not supposed to be a doctor. Okay, I'll give it up. That's not what it means at
Yeah.
all. It
Yeah.
means that we're being given the
No.
opportunity to keep moving in the direction of becoming who we want to be, and that's part of our curriculum. And that can be really hard because people really sometimes think
Mm-hmm.
that my curriculum should be easy. I should be able to want to be a doctor and just have the path just unfold, and it's all butterflies and fairies and unicorns and happiness, but it's not. It's not.
That's not been my
No.
experience,
No.
and
No,
not
no, the
yours.
the
So,
things that the
from what
things
you're
we want to
telling me,
do and
yeah.
be and the ways we want to grow and become sometimes
Hmm.
require of us the challenges along the way. And the people who meet the challenge
Absolutely.
and are able to transcend it are the people who end up being the happiest at the end of their lives.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. Um, One other quote from Mary along these lines is obstacles, including the forgiveness work. Obstacles
They are
are
not.
not stop signs.
Yes.
They're qualifiers. They're
Yes.
qualifiers. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it was Oprah Winfrey and maybe Mary Tyler Moore that both said, you don't grow by letting by everything
No,
being
nobody
handed to you.
does. Nobody does. I mean, even the story
No.
of Buddha. Buddha, everything was
Yeah.
handed to Buddha, and he didn't do his best growth until he stepped out behind the walls of the palace and saw the suffering of humanity, and it broke his heart. And that's when he,
Hmm.
went and did his deepest work and became enlightened. And so I think we have to remember that, and in all that we're saying, Don, we're certainly not saying and I just want to emphasize this for people. We're not saying that you never stop and cry about the challenges you face. You never feel your disappointment. That you never feel your feelings about it. You just have those things happen, and then boy, you just get on with it and just forgive and let go. But we are saying that I think people get stuck in their feelings and emotions, and then us more spiritually aware people not only get stuck in those feelings and emotions, then we feel guilty for having those feelings and emotions, and then our guilt kind of causes us to gloss over them. Whereas there's this perfect blend, I think, of even the most spiritual people, where we can say, "Ouch, that hurts." And I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna cry and I'm gonna journal and I'm gonna write all about how he done me wrong. I remember hearing a story from Dr. Roger Teal about a woman who lost a job she loved, and she created a timeline. She said, "Okay, you get a week. You get a week to just be the victim you want to be, cry all you want, tell everyone your sad story, get
Hmm.
it out. But when the week's over, we're getting on with it." And I don't know that a week is the magic number, but I'm
Yes.
just saying I think we
No.
have to stop and go, "Oh my gosh, my heart got broken. This person left me," and keep always in our awareness. This is part of my journey. This is part of my journey. This is part of my journey. This can bless me
Mm,
too. Even this can bless me too. And you can't have the
yes.
blessings till you're ready
Yeah.
to receive that gift. But when there's when there's enough time that we feel like we've cried and we've processed, and then we say, okay, I know who I am, I know who I want to be, it's time to get on with the forgiveness.
Yeah. There's one practice that I've heard about called the
Yes.
Namaste. Um, that my understanding of that is that it's the divine in me that recognizes and honors the
Hmm.
divine in you, so that perhaps the way I look at that is if I'm having a hard time forgiving a person, finding a way to connect to the spiritual in them with my spiritual side can help me to experience compassion for the humanness and the act that the human side of their
Yes.
nature committed. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is endeavoring to connect to the spiritual side of that person where there is no wrong
Hmm.
doing. There is no need to forgive. There is no need to do anything. Trying to get to that spiritual place and realizing that, as
We
humans, we just
do.
screw up.
Yeah.
We do. That's
Yeah.
the human
Have you
side of
seen
us.
that
Yeah.
meme I love so much? Hurt people hurt people. Yeah. So when
Mm.
people are hurt and they're suffering and they themselves have been in pain, that human side of
Mm.
them hurts people. So when I understand that, I can certainly be disappointed and frustrated and angry about what someone's done to me, but it helps me a lot to see, wow, how hurt must they have been? How much in pain must they be in to have done that to me?
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow. That's that's a very aware
it is.
place to be.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. And it's so true. I mean, I know that if I'm hurting, it's so
Oh,
easy
me
for me to
too.
lash
Mm-hmm.
out. Um, and it may have
It,
nothing to do with that person. In fact, when it just happened to
right.
me today on the phone, I was calling an electrician about something, and he kept interrupting me, and he was so angry, and I just knew. I knew because I practiced
Yeah.
this. I knew it
Yeah.
wasn't me.
Yeah.
And then he hung up on me. And then I called back and I said, "We got disconnected. So as I was saying," and all of a sudden
Yeah.
he just shifted. And sometimes if we just diffuse by not taking the challenge of
Mm-hmm.
their anger on,
Right.
because it's not ours. It's not about us. That's the hardest
Mm-hmm.
lesson for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that when I maintain my truth and my integrity, it doesn't always happen. I'll be the first to admit that. But when it does, it's amazing what happens to
Yeah.
that other
And what
person.
happens to the interaction between you? I mean,
Yeah,
in the four agreements, the first
absolutely.
agreement is don't take things personally. And I think that that applies to what you're talking
Mm,
about, even in forgiveness, because I've worked with people a lot where as we talk, we come to realize, the truth is it probably, in many instances, not in all, but in many instances where there's been wrong done to someone, it wouldn't have mattered whether I was that person's child or you were that person's child. They were so in pain, they would have done what they did to any child. So it wasn't just that something was wrong with
mm.
you. And it wouldn't have probably mattered today, Dawn, if I was on the phone with that guy or you were on the phone with that guy. Something was going on with him. He would have treated us both the same
Yeah.
way. And it's the same with a lot of these kind of situations. So I really think it's beautiful that you were able to see that and transcend that. My ego is taking this personally. He's not treating me nice. He's not treating me with the respect that I need. And instead, you're able to kind of step back and go, I bet he's having a bad day. And I had a friend who, when she encountered people like that, would say, so, just stop the conversation. So how's your day going? How are you doing today? It sounds like you're having a rough day. And it would just stop people in their
Yeah.
tracks.
Wow.
And it was like, because they you could
Mm,
hear the subtext below what was happening, behind the interaction, and that compassion and ability not to take it personally and not to push back or not to go into victim mode. Well, fine, then he's treating me badly. I guess I
Yeah.
must be a horrible customer. I don't know what I did to this guy. That kind of whiny kind of thing that people do. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so I invite people to try that, to try some of these things that Michelle was just talking about, or
Yeah.
what I just said. Just do an experiment and see what happens when you don't take something personally, when something is happening and that other person is yelling at you or treating you differently than you want to be treated.
Hmm.
See what happens when you do.
It
It's a great
is.
experiment.
It most definitely is. And I,
Yeah.
I think if anybody can start to just put these practices into place with forgiving people, like I said, just choose one person at a time. Another practice that I just want to say briefly before we close is that I have found a great support from the Hawaiian practice Ho'oponopono. Do you know about that practice, Dawn?
I do
It was found
not.
to be effective by a psychiatrist in Hawaii in a prison where mentally challenged prisoners were being kept, and the staff there found it so hard to work because these prisoners were so challenging, and the rate of keeping the staff and the director was just a constant challenge because it was just so hard to work there. So this psychiatrist went in and he started practicing this Hawaiian practice by going through the books every day and looking at every prisoner's picture and profile and doing this practice with them. And it's just four statements. It's um, please forgive me, thank you. No, it starts with I'm sorry. That's what it starts with. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Now that may seem counteractive to
Mm.
you're thinking, I've got to forgive this person, so why would I ask for their forgiveness? But it's really about the energy between myself and this other person. And so I will envision a person that I feel that I need to forgive, and I will send them energy and say, I'm sorry because I've been holding resentment against them. Please forgive me because I've been
Mm-hmm.
holding resentment against them. Thank you. Thank you for this curriculum you have supported me in. I love you. And the psychiatrist found that after practicing this with all these
Wow.
patients, everything improved. And so, if you want to look it up online, any of your listeners, you can look up Ho'oponopono and read the whole story about it.
Can you
I don't know if
can
I
you
can
spell
spell it
that?
right now. I think it's HO and then it's apostrophe and then it's O Pono, Pono. Ho O Pono Pono.
Wow.
And I love this practice. I just love it.
That's great. Yeah. So that he would say that to the inmates themselves
He
or
just
to
looked at their
their photograph?
photographs and just said it over and
Oh,
over and over
wow.
every day. And after a period of time, the behavioral issues started to decline. The whole prison got more peaceful,
Mm.
and the rate of the staff began to improve. And it became a study in. They went in and said, what the heck happened here? How did this place change so quickly? And it was all about the energy because he realized they were holding these prisoners in this energy of anger and frustration and push back and make wrong and all this stuff that was not helping the environment at all.
I love it. I love it. So was he
Yep.
the only one that
Yeah,
did this
he
practice?
was. Uh-huh.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so that's I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you.
Yes.
And I love you. And did you hear that, everybody? You don't have to do it to their
Right,
face. You can do it to
exactly.
their photo, which might be a hell of a
Yeah,
lot
one other
easier.
piece of advice is never go to someone you've forgiven and say, by the way, I've forgiven you now.
Oh, God.
I had a friend do that when he was doing 12 step once, and he was trying to make amends, and he told this woman, I forgive you, and she was like, you forgive me? What do you mean? I haven't forgiven you.
Oh, gosh.
You were the
Oh, my goodness.
one
Well, I
who.
Well, I love this.
Hmm.
Ho'oponopono. All right. Well, we'll
Okay,
put that in the
great.
show notes. Yeah, so thank you so very much once again, Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano from Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. And this concludes part 2 of 2 on forgiveness. And keep up the good work, everyone out there. And Michelle, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure,
joining us
Dawn.
once again. This is To Your Greatness with Dawn Mathis. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Take care.